point you make is that after decades of being a big worry in the world, Japan, with high debt and all that, Japan is back. That's excellent news. And you said earlier Japan had a major problem of debt. And now you're saying Japan's debt is now better than other developed countries. For example, in the early 1990s, look at that. Japan's debt was many times higher as a percentage of GDP than developed markets debt. Now, developed markets debt is higher than Japan. I think this is a transformation that is really welcome, because Japan really did suffer for many years.
For many decades.
Many decades, sorry.
Yeah, because like you will recall that in the late 1980s, Japan was the shining star.
Right.
It was, in fact, 16% of the global economy. It was 45% of global stock market value. That was Japan. It was, and then because of the bust that happened and the way it was handled, but also driven by its poor demographics, with the population shrinking, with debt levels so high, and other issues, the Japanese economy and the Japanese market have done very poorly over the last 3 decades. My point is that now quietly Japan may be making a comeback, because a lot of the problems that Japan has, the rest of the world also has, in terms of the debt levels have gone up, the demographics in the rest of the world. We're seeing more than 60 countries today have their working age population that is shrinking. That number, when Japan first went bust in 1990, was barely 20 countries had a shrinking working age population. So the rest of the world is in a way converging with Japanese standards.
Catching up with Japan, and Japan is going ahead.
And Japan is improving. Its corporate profitability is improving over time.
Yes, that's your next graphic. Have a look at that. Explain that to us. That profits are at a historic peak in Japan now.
Yeah.
As a 2% profit margin, they've gone up, what, 3 times? That's huge.
And around the world, we have seen an increase in corporate profit margins, but for a country that was criticized for not being that focused on profitability, I think it's interesting that in Japan too, we are seeing this focus come through. And also some other points that we discussed. For example, the female participation in the labor force is very high in Japan, and at about 85%. And you need more of that to try and offset the demographic disadvantage that Japan has and other countries too have. So it's a quiet comeback. It's not something which is headlined out there, but I suspect this year in 2023, we are likely to see Japan do relatively well, because of the fact that on the downside, the rest of the world has converged with it.
Right.
On the upside, Japan has seen some major improvements from its corporate profitability to the female participation in the labor force. That should help Japan in general.
I'm going to go on complete diversion. Female participation gone up in Japan, and there's a lot of data that shows that India female participation is very low. But that goes against reality when you see it. You see a man sitting just doing nothing, and the women in his family are picking wood, burning, getting water from the well, cooking. I mean, they are participating, they are working much harder than men. They just don't get paid for it in India. So the data doesn't show their participation. That's not fair.
That's possible.
Start paying for them. Okay, and one interesting point that you raised, that with Japan coming back, a rising Japan could lift India. The foreign investment from Japan to India could go up from 3% to 7% and higher. That's the trend.
Yeah, so Japan's been a major investment partner of India. Having a healthier Japan with better corporate balance sheets could further that process. And even Indo-Japanese trade has slowed down a lot, in terms of that if you look at the exports that India does to Japan, Japan's become a less and less significant partner on that. But the Japanese economy does better. That could help our exports too at the margin. But the most important point being that as an investment partner, Japan's been quite significant.
And going better and better. And the better Japan does, the more India could benefit.
That's right.
Wow, that's huge. That's very good news for India.